Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Of course, my name is Brice, and I am here with two people who don't really need introductions, but I'll go ahead and introduce them. Anyway, I've got my co-host today, Catherine Edwards, and our awesome guest today, Sean Stone. Welcome back to the channel, Sean. I'm so excited to have you back.
Absolutely. It's great to be back.
Awesome. Well, I know Catherine had a list of questions for you, and we wanted to kind of talk a little bit, something Catherine and I have been speaking about on our own channels together, something that Catherine and I both practice a lot of is meditation. And something that we've been speaking a lot about, this new timeline that we're going into, shifting the vibrational frequency of each human being. And so, Catherine, I'm going to let you take it away with some of the topics that you wanted to speak about.
Oh, that's my idea of fun. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at, obviously following your work for a long while. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about you share so well, is about really, you've got such a great balance of research, knowledge, life experience of understanding what's really going on in this weird world of ours, but also taking it back to really making the most of the human experience right here, right now. And for me, that's a sort of a link that's missing for a lot of people at the moment, because people have been on such a journey playing catch up, trying to find out what's really been going on and why things haven't been making sense for them for so long. But there's a danger with doing that, that then you can stop enjoying your life right now. And if we all believe we've been here, we've chosen to come down at this time and have a human experience, how can we maximize that? And you have got so much knowledge. I mean, you've got your new course, haven't you? The Art of Success.
Sure. Yeah. That's a workshop, and we can get into that, but wherever you want to take it.
So, okay, my first question would be then, with all the work, the knowledge that you've built up, you've just got such an incredible resume. What would be some of your key tips about getting people back to not forgetting to be in the now, be in the present, and enjoying where they're at right now?
Yeah. Well, it's the journey, isn't it? I mean, if we think about it, so much of the conspiracy, right? So a lot of people that are recognizing the nature of the conspiracy, right? We're talking about people that have been researching it for a long time, or those just waking up to the nature of a reality, have to understand that we're looking at a conspiracy that's designed to disempower the human. That's designed to basically, very much like a matrix, right? A matrix structure of energy feeding. What was the matrix about? It was the idea that basically humans are batteries. Well, if you think about it, what are humans? They're energy feeders, whether it be a debt economy, right? They're debtors. They are oftentimes working for companies that may not be serving the individual's, best interest. Let's say, like, if you're working with a company that you like, or you agree with, or you have a similar, ethos, that's beautiful. But if you're working for a company just to pay the bills, or, just basically looking to make ends meet to continue to keep yourself within a debt-based system, then you're being disempowered. And so, to me, it's like, if you recognize the nature of this conspiracy as a taxing system, essentially, literally a taxing system, and energetically a taxing system, then how do we break out of it? It's not just enough to recognize it. It's not just enough to say, well, yeah, all these things are corrupt and everything is evil, and to go into that spiral of darkness, but it's actually to step into your power, into your light, and just to, ideally live the best life, live your best life. Step into this idea of what is what is best serving my soul, my heart, my relationship with my heart, which is really our own individual love story that each of us is going through, and basically enjoy this beautiful planet that's here. It's an amazing planet. I'm looking at this beautiful cardinal red bird out here right now. It's such a rich, amazing, abundant earth that we've been given within an infinite universe. And if we don't step into that, then we're just basically beholden to a matrix structure that's imposed upon us.
It's so true, because there is beauty everywhere, isn't there? And it's just really not allowing a lot of that, how people don't allow darkness that they found out, or challenges that have gone through, like Brice and I, you know, we're all talking about sort of the learning experience of that friction of any challenge is a real opportunity for learning, but it cannot feel like that at the time, can't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were, and I know I've talked about this before, but one of the most impactful human beings in my life was a man named David Greek, who was my teacher in Philadelphia long before I went to India. And the type of yoga that I practice is a very, very challenging form of yoga. A lot of crazy shapes you're doing with your body that trigger a lot of intensity in your thoughts and emotions and your physical sensation. And I learned from him, you know, if he had a young girl come in like her early 20s who was super fit, maybe was a gymnast, cheerleader, he wasn't super like interested. He'd, oh, next posture, it's fine. But if an elderly man came in who was overweight and could barely touch his toes, David would get so excited. He would be like, now we have something to work with. Now we have resistance. And that shifted the way I see so much in my life, not just in the physical practice, but in that when these challenges come up that maybe the matrix is providing. And, you know, I think a lot of people do go through that dark night of the soul when they start to wake up and they realize like how much of everything they've lived is basically an illusion and a lie. You go through that kind of like mourning process, but then you're like, okay, but now I have something to work with. Now I have that point of resistance. And when there's resistance, there's friction. When friction happens, that's when light is created. And that I think is something that's really going to be key. You know, so many people are just waiting for someone else to do something. But no, that's the part of the awakening is like you are awakening. You are the one living out that resistance. That's your power. So.
Yes, we need that. Exactly. We need the resistance, the friction. The darkness is the only way that the light can be seen, right? If there's no dark, you can't see the stars. So the darker it gets, as I said, it creates more friction, it creates more challenge. Okay, that asks you then to step into your authenticity, right? And this is what we've been able to see in the last couple of years, especially, is who's who, right? Who actually has integrity, who actually has authenticity, who actually is willing to, you know, to basically say, this doesn't make sense, and I'm not going to impose my fear upon others. And those that are basically saying, I'm in panic, I'm in fear, I'm gonna lord over others and try to be an authoritarian or play out this modality that's predicated in my own fear. So basically, we get to see, you know, who's driven by fear and who's driven by love. I mean, that's really the two forces that have always been at work. I mean, not to say that fear has its place, like it's like yin and yang, right? There's fear has its place as a motivator, as a teacher, but a lot of people are they're driven too much by the fear control them, essentially, right? As opposed to letting love really be our guide. And so, yeah, I think these are the two forces that are predominantly at work in our reality, as fear and love.
So what are some of the tips that you've learned and that you employ to really tune into your intuition? And so integrity was something Brice and I were speaking about last week, and it's so important. And I think on all levels, just what you were saying there, people really are seeing now, you know, who's coming from a place of love and who's coming from a place of fear. But a lot of people slip back into doubt and doubting those messages they're getting themselves. So how do you deal with that? Do you still have those doubts? How do you really tune in and make those decisions in your life?
Tune in as far as which aspects? How do you mean?
In terms of, one, from the integrity, and secondly, in terms of really picking up, you know, who perhaps is influencing, or in your circle might be from a place of love or a place of fear.
Well, I mean, I would say that for the most part, I never had like a large circle. You know, I basically, you know, I have a partner that I live with, and, you know, we've been able to, throughout the course of my life, in a way, already like weed out a lot of people because of the work that I've been doing for a long time. But especially in the last couple of years, we've moved to Florida. You know, we're living in a very tranquil, peaceful, beautiful place. And, you know, the things, I guess, again, the reality is shifting consistently. So we're no longer thankfully in Florida, no longer playing the games of masks and, you know, vaccination cards and all this kind of stuff. I guess some people in other realities are still playing that game. You know, that's fine. That's not our reality. That said, there's always going to be issues arising that have to do with, again, the limitation of where consciousness is at any particular point, right? And so I see it as there's, how do you say, it's like you basically, you know who you resonate with when it comes to a project, when it comes to an endeavor, you know, who basically has a similar ethos. I see the whole thing shifting, basically. Like the entire reality, the entire construct of the matrix has to come down. And a lot of people are still trapped in it. Even people that are more progressive in their psychology and their understanding, you know, made money and they have that like confidence and abundance energy, but there's still a lot of them are still stuck in the matrix modalities. And we see it all the time, right? And so the matrix modality is fundamentally parasitic. It's fundamentally has us at odds with each other. It fundamentally has us in fear and scarcity modality because of the way that all money is created with debt. So there's a lot of people that are doing their best, but, you know, again, they can be doing work like, you know, holistic or healers or you know, doing light work, but they're still stressed out by the fact that we got to earn money. We have to make a living. So there is that factor that, you know, we can't sit here and say, well, you know, why haven't you completely extricated yourself from the matrix? Well, it's a process that we have to go collectively through. Like, if we can't just do it as only individuals, like, yes, there are people that are already leading the way, they're trailblazing in that direction, right? But as a collective, we have to shift at least a few million of us, I would say, you know, at least, you know, 100 million plus of us have to shift into a new economy to make it viable. It's not viable if it's only a handful of people, right? Then it's basically back to tribalism. Then it's back to, like, you know, living on the land and you know, finding like a commune. Like, no, I think collectively, you know, hundreds of millions have to start shifting away from this modality of operating with debt-based scarcity in terms of the creation of money, right? The printing of money, the resources that are being, you know, controlled again through scarcity and through fear and, you know, supply chain, all these issues. It's like, it's all based in scarcity. That's how they keep us, you know, confused and in fear. And so whether the narrative went from, you know, the authority of the government to tell you what to do with your body around COVID and to lock down your business, now to like the fear of like, oh, supply chain and farming, you know, food issues, all these things, it's still designed to keep us in fear. So we have to choose to move out of that system collectively and basically say, we're not going to play that game anymore. We need to design new systems. And it's already happening. Like, we have to trust that it's already happening beyond our immediate perception, just the same way that, you know, technologies have always had benefits to us. Right now, we can criticize Facebook or Twitter and other things for censorship, but fundamentally, they've all done they've all had their role to play in advancing communication and advancing our connectivity, right? And the same is going to happen now when it comes to new economies, new connections. I really believe that new technologies, the cryptocurrencies, all these things have their roles to play in creating new abundance, because really we are infinitely abundant. And a lot of these people are still stuck in this old economic modality where it's like, oh, you can't give people money because then it devalues the money. It's like, listen, money is energy. Yeah. Everyone has abundant energy. We don't have infinite energy. We have to rest. We have, you know, we disperse our energy over time, right? These are all factors of energy. But if everyone had money reflecting their energy, it would not, we have to get rid of the idea that it would devalue money, because all money is energy. And what we need is an economy and a worldview where every being bringing their energy to contribute has something basically to offer, whether it's, you know, you name it, whether it's working a field, whether it's a creative endeavor, innovation, a technology, consumption. Even consumers are benefiting business. So it's like we have to shift our way of seeing the world into total abundance, the same way that nature is, where everything has its role to play. No one goes, well, the ants, you know, they don't deserve to get paid as much because, you know, they're doing because there's so many of them. It's like, no, they're getting exactly what they need in reflection to what they're doing. And that's the way that I see that we have to become more holistic and harmonious in terms of every one of us has different insights, abilities, and you know, and time basically to devote to things. And if we can start to recognize that everyone has something to contribute in, you know, again, in time, then we will create new economies that are actually sustainable for bringing, you know, potentially millions of more beings into this world, rather than right now an economy that's currently geared to killing off 2/3 of the population so that the elites can continue to basically hoard scarce resources.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting. When my first trip to India, I ended up one night accidentally in the slums with my friend, which I don't recommend doing that. Guys, if you're in India, don't accidentally end up there. But what ended up happening was I was so affected by the poverty that I saw there that we opened up a foundation, and every time I'm in India, we raise money to help, and we were connected with the Safe House, and we've done a lot of. It's been a beautiful opportunity. But we were talking about the new economy and all this resistance, and I kept thinking about one of the biggest lessons that I personally learned working in the slums is seeing people that have lived a completely different life than me. Like, we're talking people who don't even have toilets in their house. And for a while, it made me feel really shitty about myself because of how snobby. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm pissed when my phone's not charged enough. How dare I? But it's taught me a lot. But then I would get to know the kids, and I play, and how happy everybody was. And that taught me so much about being able to accept certain paths we're given in life. And I also realized that I think one thing that in the Western world, and I'm just generalizing, guys, we have a really hard time, Westerners, with being uncomfortable, because our whole existence is based around comfort. And I think a lot of people are having a hard time because I think anytime there's a change, whether it's controlled demolition or an accidental change, when we get uncomfortable, we try to run away from that and go back to what we know, if that makes sense. So what would be your advice be for people that maybe this is a new concept for them, that being uncomfortable is part of the friction? Do you have any techniques you can give people, like in your course or something, where it can help people's mind kind of settle into the bumpiness of growth, the bumpiness of shifting into a new reality, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I understand. It's growing pains, it's difficult to to gauge where everyone is. But look, there's a reason why, especially in America, I'm not sure about England and and Europe, but especially in America, you have, and I've heard up to like half the population or so, maybe even more, is medicated. That indicates a lot when it comes to discomfort, dysregulation, like how people are dealing with their dysregulation and their discomfort is to turn to drugs, which actually further imbalances your body, further puts you into like, how do you say, it doesn't help you fundamentally. It just gives you like basically a feeling maybe that you're, feeling better, but it's not actually systemically making you better. So when it comes to discomfort, look, it's a growth edge, and we all have them, right? We all have our different growth edges where we're being pushed. There's somatic practices. Breath work is a somatic practice to help people to basically learn to breathe, and meditation is an aspect of it. If you're breathing properly, or really getting in there with that oxygen, letting the oxygen work with your system. The problem is that we are so mental, especially in the Western world. And I mean, I think China has gone that way. I mean, India, a lot of the world, you can say globally, has just gone this place of being in the mind. And the mind is disconnected from the body. So oftentimes we are uncomfortable. Oftentimes we are not embodied in a way that we feel good in our bodies, but we go into mental states to preoccupy us or to take us out of the moment, and to basically avoid the moment. Mm-hmm. So it really is a question of bringing ourselves into our body, being able to sit in the body, to be able to help the body be it with breath, be it with self-care, be it with again, just attention to what needs to be attended to. Because it's fundamentally that thing where it's like, if you can do something, do it. If you can't, then why worry about it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of that's the solution. But yeah, we all have our growth edges. We all have things that are that stress us, you know, and it's okay. Like we just have, that's part of our growth as a being, is to actually go through that experience. You know, recently we've had like serious plumbing, you know, issues and leaks, and having our house, like our all kinds of stuff stripped out, and it's like it's very stressful and dysregulating. Yeah, obviously we're lucky to have a home, and we, you know, it's not like, you know, we're living in a slum, but it's still a stressful experience. And it's not, no one should be, no one, how you say, no one should be belittled or, you know, accused of being like, you know, attacked or called privileged because that's what their experience is. We all have our stresses, we all have our suffering, and it's just, it's unique to each of us for our soul's journey of experiencing this body, this incarnation. And, you know, obviously we can't measure, I mean, what one person's suffering is to another person. It's like they're just two different experiences of reality. So I don't blame people for appreciating comfort. You know, we've developed technologies and standards of living that have given us, you know, a level of comfort that honestly everyone on the planet should be able to have. The issue is a lot of our psychology is probably, the problem with our psychology is that we're so interested in redistribution that, like I said, what I was talking about before was, no, the energy is abundant. The wealth is abundant. We have to stop thinking like it has to be redistributed. Your gain is someone else's loss. That's zero. That's a zero sum game. That's actually psychopaths perpetuate that philosophy because it has nothing to do with reality. Your gain is not my loss. Your gain is your gain. Nothing to do with my loss. It's like a consumer and a producer. You know, if I, you know, it's like, it's about exchange. It's about trades, right? It's the idea like, okay, you know what? I would like to buy, you know, this car or whatever. I believe it's worth this much money, right? You know, the producer makes their profit. The consumer, I enjoy the car. You know, that's for me to enjoy and, you know, to make the most of. That's just a silly example, but it's like one example of many where it doesn't have to be this idea that one person wins so the other person can lose. We all are benefiting from this exchange process where I have certain things to offer, you have things to offer, Catherine has things to offer. None of us can offer the exact same thing. And that's why this world is so abundant. And we have all these billions of people that actually each has their own unique perspective, skill set, mind, heart. If we could start to value and appreciate everyone, we realize that it's just like the earth, the animals of this earth. Oh, you know, the dolphins are all doing the same thing. No, every dolphin is doing its own thing. Every fish is doing its own thing. Every ant is doing its own thing. It's all serving the whole. Yeah. We have to shift our psychology away from this zero-sum psychology, which has limited us for thousands of years.
I'm so happy you brought that up because that is something, Catherine and I have talked about this a little bit. This survival mode, and we all have survival modes, but it's almost like dog eat dog. And you're right. It's like this idea that if I don't make this X amount of money or whatever it is in this life, then somebody else is, and I'm just going to be out on the street. And no, there's enough for everyone. And I know I grew up in a private school that was generational lineage. And so you saw a lot of families who were wealthy for generations. And the stress, and a lot of those kids at my, I have to be careful how I said that, a lot of those kids ended up taking their own lives, removing themselves because of this at very young ages, because of that stress of maintaining a certain lifestyle, maintaining a certain, but you're right. Why that's ridiculous, because every human being has a special imprint and has a special, you know, but it is taking, I think sometimes it's taking that power outside of you, and it's like chasing that dangled carrot when everything is already inside of you anyway. And so I do think that, you know, people talk about generational wealth, and I'm like, that's not what you got. It's not as cracked up as you guys think it is. There's a lot of stress there that can be very traumatic for people. And that, again, it comes to that idea that if I don't follow this path or do this thing, I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be destitute. And that's not true. There is enough for everybody. But I think that is something that the controllers, have instilled in us to keep us in that area of dog eat dog. And that, although I don't like calling it dog. Do what?
They want us fighting each other. I mean, this is communism became the new left. It was like, first it was class warfare. There's no class warfare. Henry Ford is a great model of that. He said, look, he was one of the first to pay his employees well. He said, he wasn't in favor of the unions. And I think there's reason for that. If you think about how controlling unions can be. And I mean, look, we've got some really bad examples of unions now forcing people to get vaccinated. So it's like whenever there's a big controlling apparatus, I'm against it. I'm all in favor of free will, free choice, freedom of exchange and interaction, choosing, our basically, where we work and our wages and all these things. So Ford, I mean, they see, look, I'm going to pay my employees at that time $5, 100 years ago was something. It was like $5 a day wages so that they could afford to buy the car. You see? And it's like, that's the whole point. Business people want employees to make money so that they can afford, the goods that are being created, right? The problem is the debt system. The banker's philosophy is, I don't care if you're making, I don't really want you to make, good money. I want you to make just enough you can pay off the interest on your credit line. And
be beholden to us. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have a credit line that runs at least 30 years. And that's how we're all designed, 30-year mortgages, right? All these lines of credit, they're at least, they're like 3 to 5 years to start. Credit cards are through a lifetime. And the intention is never to pay it off, but it's to pay such on the interest that you've paid it 6, 7, 8 times, 10 times over you originally owed. That's how, so that's the point. You see, it's like there is no war between business and employee. And they knew that. So they had to shift it to like identity politics, and vaccine status and other stuff, racial stuff, you're white, you're bad. I mean, all this stuff. It's like, this is how they had to shift it because, and even, also this was also used again as a tactic to keep, the poor whites against the slaves in the South in America, for example. I mean, most people weren't slaveholders. most of the poor whites in the South were just, they were poor. They were working the land too, or they're looking for work, and and they were taught to hate Black people because it was this idea of keep people at war with each other so that they see each other as competition, rather than the idea that fundamentally none of us is competing. There is enough resource, space, oxygen, food for all of us. In fact, the more humans, and this is actually was the American system of economics, as Henry Carey writing about this stuff, saying, look, human innovation and creativity is what creates the food. This is harvested. This is not like if you just have land laying around that's not worked, it's probably not going to produce food that you're going to, maybe some berries and things like this, but it's not going to produce the food that you need. You actually have to work the land. So that requires humans to this process. What they're shifting now to is this idea that everything will be roboticized. So it's like, let's get rid of the humans. We'll just have everything mechanized.
And all made in the lab. Yeah, no thanks.
Right.
I'm finding out as we speak how hard work the gardening is, because we've got a lovely big plot and I've been doing loads of plants, my vegetables, which I did years ago when the kids were small, and then you get too busy, and now I'm doing it and it's absolutely fantastic having that connection. But you're so right, Sean, it is a lot of effort, but it's worth it. But one of the things you were saying there that really hit home is there's so much of this that's deliberately done, but at the end of the day, it couldn't succeed if we all on an individual basis focused on looking inwards first before outside. So these tactics are really alluring. Don't get me wrong, I was out working this morning and I was really cold, so I stopped off and got some crack food from the garage. So the temptations are always there. But do you think if people just relearn and were re-supported, which is what I know you do a lot of, Sean, in terms of to how the old saying goes, mind my own business, but not in a bad way, an insulting way, in terms of look after my own mind, body, spirit first. And if we did that, we wouldn't be allured and tempted and these things would shift a lot quicker.
Yes, it would, because so much of the problem is lording over others. It goes back to like the nature of religions. It's like the original text, the original prophets and teachings. These were the renegades. These were the people that were basically saying, this is the message coming through me from spirit. And then someone basically grabbed it and said, okay, now I'm going to turn it into I am in charge. I'm the authority. I am representing God on earth. I get to decide who lives, who dies. I get to decide the law for everyone. And really the law is simple. Do not trespass. Do not take from someone else, and, do not take that which is not yours. Do not trespass. That's really all that exists in life. And we've gone from that into a million codes, a million, laws in the books, right? Trying to regulate every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
healthy.
yeah. What is it? You can't even like, different states are different. They even regulate what you do with your own yard. So in the United States, so like if you wanted to plant a garden, you have to go through regulation on your own property.
That's because of commerce. What they did was they used commercial law. Everything basically they use commercial law. And actually, if you fundamentally understand, like everything in our world is based on maritime legal structures. It's all commerce. It's all based on commerce. So that's why they can get into your yard. That's why you don't own your land. You have to pay a tax. All these things are really interesting if you think about how it's just, none of us is really a sovereign being that owns even him or herself. And that's what's crazy. Like, that's why they have so much authority. They couldn't just detain you and put you in a prison if you actually were a free being. If you hurt someone, if you harmed someone, right? That's the universal law. Harming someone, that then you might suffer, you'd suffer jail time. But like, just whatever it may be, driving too fast. Oh, we detain you. Here's your ticket, right? All these things are examples of how they basically they tell you that you are not a sovereign free being. You are basically, as they say, like, oh, it's for the best of the society. But is it really for the best of society? Is it really just about keeping everyone in check?
It's so funny. When I did a deep dive into the Act of 1893 or 1870, can't remember the year now, 73, Act of 1873, after with Ulysses S. Grant, with when DC was created, that video got taken down off YouTube. So obviously I said something right. But that's you guys a badge of honor when they take them off. But when I was going deep into the research for myself, because obviously I'd studied this before in school, but I never, at that point, it never like quite filtered as it does now, what we're living through now. I mean, y'all, in America, we weren't supposed to have driver's license. There weren't supposed to be speed limits. You weren't supposed to have any paperwork that was owned by the state.
Obviously, the argument is, well, they didn't have cars back then, so they couldn't foresee it. And the question, of course, becomes like, well, how does this community regulate itself, right? And this is the point. I think we have to get back to that idea of being communal creatures that can self-regulate, right? And that we can be human with each other, because all the corporate codes and corporate laws are designed as such that they don't have any human touch to them. So it's like, if you've violated the law, it's the law, as opposed to, no, as a human being, let's take every every crime as an individual, as an individual thing, not just, well, you hurt someone, you go to jail. It's like, no, like, let's actually look at the situation, the context, right? This is the way it was supposed to be, jury by our peers. Like, it was meant to be this idea of humanity seeing a situation. Instead, you got this massive corporate prison system. You got this massive corporate state. You got this entire complex of authorities that have been established to profit. It's all money making. At the end of the day, like, it's like they joke like, oh, the police have to make their quota by giving you tickets. That's absurd. That's corruption. Like, literally, in other countries, it's funny because, like, if we go to Mexico and the police pull you over and you give them $100, that's corrupt. But in America, they pull you over and give you a $100 ticket. That's not corrupt.
Yeah. That's the same way in India too. You can, like, they call it bakshish. There's a little name for bakshish, it's bribery. And that's, do you guys have that in England, Catherine, where the cops, and in Georgia, it's really bad. We have really, not in Atlanta's a little, but outside of it, you can tell when it's the end of the month, because they're literally just cops everywhere looking to pull you over for anything. We have super speeder tickets. It's crazy, the level of intensity that's behind that. And I support the police. I support, but it's I don't know if you guys have that in the UK, where they have to make certain quotas with tickets.
We do, but it's not as bad as where you guys are, because whenever we come over to the States, we're really shocked about how people comply with the speed limits and things, because we don't comply with the speed limits. But then you get the silly behaviors where they've got the speed cameras and everyone races up in between and slams on their brake, and we all have great fun doing it.
That's the worst. See, that's exactly to me, like, that's the epitome of where they want to take everything to the digital domain, the digital level of surveillance and monitoring. Like in Australia as well, they have these, speed cameras that, oh, you went, as soon as you're over 10 miles they got you, right? Immediate ticket. And I'm like, man, this is so unhuman. This is just complete robot. They want people to be roboticized, basically. You must obey the law. Fast. You must, you must surrender your ability to have any freedom. Just getting your, getting your driverless, what do they call it? Like a self-driving EV, and basically, you are now controlled by the state. That's the way that they want it, because it's easier when you're an authoritarian personality, which again, these psychopaths are, to regulate. But we as free beings are not about regulation. We're about self-regulation, and ultimately, again, finding communities that resonate with us. So a lot of what needs to happen, especially in America, is taking the power back from the federal level, deconstructing all that, destroying the DC swamp, bringing the power back to the states, to the counties, and to the individuals that we are the ones that comprise this country, right? And we have to collectively decide. So maybe, maybe this community doesn't vibrate with, with someone's moral code or whatnot. Okay, they can relocate. That's okay. But if we have a federal government telling us all the code, then we have to leave the entire country. And this is why I'm much prefer states' rights to federal power is telling us what to do.
Absolutely. And I think that this last couple of years has given us Americans at least a huge lesson into how important your governors are, how important, because we could see that with different, Florida is basically like normal, Florida's like the MVP of the United States right now. And we were talking about that, Catherine, that Florida used to be the state we made fun of, I think I've told this story before. When I was in 4th grade and we had to learn our state's capital, I had a really hard time remembering Tallahassee for Florida. So my very Southern mother told me that Florida looks like a Talawaki. So that's why you remember Tallahassee. And so my mother taught me that in 4th grade. I've never forgotten. But we can see that like New York, California, and then you look at even Georgia's not as bad as most other states in this whole situation with our own sovereign freedoms. And that's the whole thing going on right now with Roe versus Wade, the whole debacle that, in my opinion, is trying to cover up other stuff that's being released too. It's a whole distraction mechanism. But at the end of the day, if it's overturned, then it just goes down into state rights.
Right.
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
And if you live in a state that says, no, this is not going to be legal, we got 49 other states in the union.
I mean, like the most extreme state right now is what, Texas, with like, you can, 2 months, you can't have an abortion after 2 months. I mean, that's basically the most extreme scenario at this point, I think.
Yeah. So I don't understand if people don't realize, like, the United States was always supposed to be a republic. It was always supposed to be based on, and therefore you do have more power. You do have more say. It's not mob rule, and if the federal government having too much control, especially in a country as big as the United States, means that if New York could tell Arizona what to do, and they're two totally different geographical locations with different needs. It's like, I don't understand how people don't see how smaller is better, in that sense that we all get a say in how our lives are managed.
That's the way that's the way we want it. Exactly. Bring the power back as close to home as possible. I
live in the middle of the countryside, and what you find over where I live is that the people that live in the rural areas out of the big cities, they do self-regulate. We don't have any police here. They've cut all the police. We don't have any things, and it works really, really well. And quite often we're really left to our own devices, and there might be rules and regulations, but no one knows whether you're keeping to them or not. So do you think it's going to take people at an individual level to really look? There's got to be some compromise, because like you were saying earlier, Sean, all of the technology, it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. And we're so used to just taking the things that suit us and then blaming others for doing things that don't. But actually, when people realize that they really have got a lot more choice right now about which businesses they support, about, like you were saying, you guys have chosen to move because you wanted to be somewhere that suited your ethos. Now, I know it's not as easy for some people just to up sticks and move, but you can plan it, you can make plans, you can start moving towards what you do want. But it is interesting, because quite often when we're speaking, the difference about when you do live in a sort of rural area is you are pretty much left to your own devices, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And this is what we see across the world. I mean, they call it, my friend said, it's like basically people that are closer to nature, they're more rural, they understand God's laws more, right? People that are in cities are in man's law, right? It's a grid, it's a matrix, it's it's EMF pollution and light pollution and concrete that disconnects them from the soil, and everything is right angles, right? It's all like, it's all designed with right angles, which is not natural. There's no right angles in nature. Everything is curved. So really, you think about what's at play is like city life is meant to disconnect us from our hearts, right? It's meant to get us in the mind game. And yeah, I mean, nature is our heart. We all have our own nature, and that we find it within our heart. That's why our hearts don't lie. It's our minds that lie.
That's so true. So, quite conscious of your time, because you're a busy man. So what would be some of your key tips for people that, if people are watching this now and they're feeling frustrated that, yeah, okay, what can I start doing differently today? I know everyone's situation is different, but, a few good steps that are sort of general things that could apply to a lot of people to start taking back their own personal power.
It's about self-worth. About self-worth and self-love, I would say, right? So the Art of Success course is a beautiful course because it offers people reflection to connect to their own innate value, their own success that each one of us has by just being alive, and the experiences that we've enjoyed. Like, so the course offers a lot of powerful like questions and exercises, journal exercises, meditations that hopefully help people activate, because that's where it starts, right? If we have self-love, we can be respectful. If we can self-love, we can love others. If we have self-respect, we can respect others, right? If we have self-confidence, we can show up in the world in a way that's healthy and positive. Too many people are showing up without self-love, without self-respect, without self-worth, so they take it out on others, right? And that's all represented by their fear. Because if you have self-love, you're not in fear. Yeah, I mean, we have faith. That's it. It's like there's faith, and yeah, we all have our moments of fear and doubt, but self-love is more powerful. Courage is more powerful than fear. So all that is to say that if we don't get right with ourselves, we can't show up in the world in any way that's positive. And then you end up with these people that are passive aggressive, you heckling and attacking people on Twitter, but have no courage in real life. Just basically like hungry ghosts that just go, basically just trying to feed on whatever is given to them, whatever someone else is selling. They're out there, hawking, like they don't have anything to stand upon in their own being. That's the thing. Each one of us has to like really grasp that, like, we are these powerful creators. We are stars. We emit light, just like the sun. It may not be as strong as the sun, but we emit light. We are these star beings, and we need to step into that knowing and that authority, so that we don't have to be told anymore, like little children, what to do, where to go, when you can work, where you can wear a mask, what to put in your body. All that is for kids, and not in a positive way. So children have beautiful beings, but they're basically like, we treat kids like, you must go here, you must obey. Well, no, we have to treat humans as sovereign beings.
Yeah. So true. So there's no excuse. So we'll put the links to your course and your websites and where people can find you below. And certainly I think, if people want to make some changes, that's the perfect place for them to start, to really start, look at yourself, work at yourself first, and you're just going to radiate that out into all the decisions you make.
And I will say too, as somebody who's been working on myself for last 15 years intensely with teachers, having a course, something like that, when you're first, even for me 15 years later, it's so helpful to have someone keep you on the path, because we all have blind spots. Our minds always get the best of us, and so when you have somebody outside of yourself that's helping you stay, or a course that's helping you stay on the path, it really makes a huge difference. I would not be where I am without my teachers, that basically don't let me believe my own bullshit and keep me on the path, so that is an awesome thing you're offering, Sean, with the workshops and stuff, because a lot of people are very, very new, I feel like, to this idea of true spirituality, meaning working on that who you really are beyond the external self that the matrix has told you are. And I think that is absolutely where we're moving. And along with that, comes the new money system, the new everything, because we're learning more about how powerful we truly are and we are a fractal of light. I say this all the time in my studies of the missing books of the Bible, even looking at Genesis 1:3, when in the English translation, God said, let there be light. Well, the original Hebrew word light meant divine spark. God said, let there be a divine spark. He was talking about you. God said, let there be you, and you are that fractal of that power. And that light that you have is what they fear, and so own it. That's yours. That's your light. You are that you are Genesis 1:3. That's you. That's your love story from God. So yes, guys. And I will say too, one thing that in the Yoga Sutras, they talk about this as well, and something that I work with on myself too, because I have high anxiety. A lot of what you mentioned, something about having that faith and having that, and trying to really just, even in shadows of doubt. And for me, I know whenever I feel my anxiety flare up or fear flare up inside of me, it's where I've almost lost a little bit of my alignment with source, with God, where I'm starting to fear that it's not, that something isn't going to go. And to be able to sit with that and say, okay, take that pause, which is what meditation offers you a lot, is that pause to kind of regroup and realize, everybody watching, you're a badass. You're like, as I said yesterday in a video, you're like Xena warrior princess from the Galactics. Like you're a fractal of God. So it's just understanding how special you really are. And once we all do that and we really feel it in itself, that's true. You do. This Yoga Sutras talk about this well. When you feel your own light, you start to notice the light in other people as well, and in animals. And when you notice their light, you're not going to want to hurt them, steal from them, project anger onto them, because you see that same light. So
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all the links down in the description box below, guys. And I'm also going to link over to your website for, and Venmo is where your whole docuseries is, right? That we spoke about last time. That's still really good. If you guys have not seen Sean's docuseries, you absolutely need to. It's fantastic. I know, Catherine, you watched it as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we'll link that below in case you guys missed that from the last episode we did with Sean. And Sean, I would love to have you come back again and unpack everything that needs to be unpacked. So
thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.